Hey, good morning, Professor Tootle.
Good morning.
So, we're going to be talking power today. Uh,
Mm,
and I think you're going to give some insights. Most of them have been from previous conversations over the last 5 years.
yeah.
But I kind of think we've got a somewhat tipping point. If I were a betting man, which I'm not, I would say there is something. It's not just Trump. It's not just Trump's foreign policy. It's not just culturally within America that a lot of people want to be isolation. I think, and it's not just Europe's reaction to us and the Prime Minister Carney's speech that was pretty interesting. I don't know if you had a chance to read or watch that, but there's a tipping point I think going on in the world, and I've got my eyebrows raised that I think we're in for a more dangerous spell for years or decades. And so I'm not actually asking you to wax poetic on that. I am asking you to talk about history and power, though, so we can kind of think through it as citizens better.
Hmm.
Ready?
Yeah.
Cool. Nice to see you. So,
Great.
uh, I went through Air Force ROTC, then dropped out, then went joined the Army and enlisted. So I have a pretty good experience with some of the military's experience on how they teach about power. And you
Mm,
would just think it's firing M16s and Claymore mines and M1A1s and F-16. There's a lot of ways to say power, it's just brute force, weaponry. But the military teaches you a lot of stuff besides just power. The communications and leadership and camping. There's just a lot of stuff they teach you. One of them is a stuff that a two-star general, acquaintance friend of mine, used to preach on it constantly in the business community, and that's the instruments of national power. And so I learned this as an enlisted guy and as an officer, but also heard generals talk about it. And the four instruments of national power are diplomatic, informational, military, and economic. And that a nation, a powerful nation, should use all those instruments of national power. You don't want to just use your tariff policy, or you don't want to not have embassies in case there's a person in trouble, or get intelligence overseas. And you also want to be nice once in a while, and you also want to be mean with nice words once in a while. And yes, there's the military. Can you give a gut reaction historically? Does that
yeah. I mean,
kind of
it
make sense,
jives.
or is that an American thing?
No, well, I mean, there are sort of categories of history that align closely with those things. In the old days, back when the world made sense and we taught history in America, the old categories were political, diplomatic, military, and then, social, cultural. And
Okay.
those tend to line up with what we would call causation. And causation is another way of saying power, making something happen. So
Okay.
it makes a certain amount of sense. When you're talking
Okay.
about what is it that causes something to be something else,
Excellent. Okay, so that's a framework of national policy that I just kind of went overriding, and it sounds like you translated that pretty well. I didn't read it because I don't subscribe to the New York Times, but I guess David Brooks wrote a column today, and he ended with this quote from John Adams in a letter from 1798. So I'd like to get your perspective on this,
Mhm.
because I think it more sophisticatedly describes my angst of
Okay.
maybe the tipping point going on in America right now. The
Mhm.
quote is, "We have no government armed with power, capable of certainty, with human passions unbridled by morality and religion." My handwriting is horrible here. Avarice, something revenge, and gallantry would break the strongest cords of our Constitution as a whale goes through a net.
Mhm.
So he's saying that it doesn't matter how powerful your government is, absent unless you have morality and religion. And if you're mean spirited, evil, if you have avarice, ambition, you can break all that. Are you familiar with that quote? Did I do it some
Yeah.
justice, or did I screw it up?
Yeah, I think you might have mangled a couple words
I
there.
did.
Uh, but it's an old concept. It's something that many people including myself would agree with. That in fact, we talked about that Daniel Patrick Moynihan quote many times. in the on this podcast about the relationship between culture and politics, and that
Can you remember it, or is it that one you botched?
yeah, it's the one that I always want to include the full one because even when you look it up on the internet, they always cut the last sentence off. But it's
Yeah.
literally if you go to Daniel Patrick Moynihan's memoirs, it's the very last thing in Daniel Patrick Moynihan's memoirs. Um, and it's he's reiterating something that many statesmen have said over the years. You know, Eisenhower said it, Coolidge said it, Lincoln said it, Hayes said it, Grant said it. Which is that government can create the preconditions for society to function, but it is still up to individuals to create the culture. And you cannot um, offload that to the government. Like the government can't do that. It's something that has to happen. I mean, Eisenhower, I remember there was this press conference where Eisenhower was, and there were members of the sort of black press corps, and of course they would ask questions about civil rights, and he would quote himself in previous speeches where he would say that make the point that every American has to put into their hearts this thing that makes equality a living fact. And yes, we have to have laws, and I do not decry laws, right? But but in order to do the work of America and create equality, that's something that individual Americans have to put into their hearts.
And do people realize, and I'm switching gears to a different topic, but do people realize how much power or importance their words and actions are? I'm not talking governors and congressmen. I'm talking about a business person and a father or a mother. Do people
I tend to
realize?
think of it the other way around, which is I think people overestimate how much power they have over over other people, and how much power they want over other people, which is to say they think they can use uh, government and culture in order to, sort of beat someone over the head and make them be a different person rather
Yeah.
than as if it is not the job of parents. Uh, and, once you get beyond the nuclear family, and even um, let's just say once children are of a certain age, example becomes far more important in shaping character. In other words, you have to sort of teach kids to seek out good advice and people of high character. That's the thing. And then what you hope is that with a little bit of luck, people of wisdom and high character will be around them, providing them with a good example. Uh, and but you can't really force someone to believe something they do not believe. And that's something, I mean, I always thought that was interesting. Keep going back to history, which is, I guess, you hired
We have a show.
why you hired me. But when Benjamin Franklin was talking to the House of Commons, and they were like, we're going to send the what would happen if we sent the military there to go collect the tax? And Franklin was like, they won't find an army. Who are they going to fight? And 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 he testified to Parliament. You know, we used to want this British stuff, but because we don't like you anymore, we no longer want this British stuff, and you can't make us want it now. wanting this British stuff was tied to how we felt about you. And now we don't like you. So what are you going to do? You know, point a bayonet at us and say, you must desire the latest British fashions. Like, I don't want that stuff anymore because I don't want to be associated with that anymore. Um, I'm sure we can all think of a
Oh,
metaphor in life for this, but I mean, I
someone
used this example in my class the other day. I was like, you know, I don't like tomatoes on anything. Uh, and
you didn't like lasagna or like Mexican food
I
or
love tomato sauce, but I just
okay, all
don't
right,
like
okay.
fresh sliced tomatoes on a sandwich or a hamburger or anything like that. And so I say to the person when I'm ordering, like, hey, hold the tomatoes. And if someone were to bring me a tomato, they would be bringing me something I don't want. And you can't bribe me with fresh sliced tomatoes because I don't want fresh sliced tomatoes.
Yeah.
Like, and no matter how much you tell me, oh, you should really value this. I'm like, and they'll say, oh, this is the best one you've ever had. I'm like, I don't like it. Get it, like, get it away from me. I don't want that thing. You can't make me want it.
So where's the power in all those stories you just told me? Is it in that individual? Is it in the
Well,
culture? Is it in the, it's not in the
so let
government, you're
me let me
saying?
be clear about this because maybe it'll set up the rest of our argument. There's nothing like violence and the threat of violence. We always have to remember we need to keep our categories clear that if you are actually harming someone using violence or, holding a gun to someone and saying, if you don't do this thing, I will physically harm you. You can compel someone to do something in that moment, and we can call that power, right? But once it gets beyond violence and the threat of violence, power comes from your brain, from the individual conscience. And then it's something closer to influence. Once you remove violence, we should probably use the word influence, not power.
Okay.
If we're trying to keep our categories clear.
I really like that. I'm glad we've got to that stage early, but I'm glad we got to it. That's really nice.
So,
Uh,
once Trump was threatening invasion, that's violence because he's saying, like, if you don't do this thing, we're going to take it. We're going to use our military. We're going to invade your country.
we're gonna kill people and
We're
break
going to
things.
kill, and innocent people are going to die when we invade Greenland. Once he took that off the table, now we're talking about a bunch of bad things he can do to try to influence policy, but it's not the same.
Yeah, agreed. But I think the
That's why
reaction we
that really was a precipice in his presidency.
But I
When
think the reaction we got from Greenland and Canada and Europe and NATO was over that force of a
yes,
gun. I
but
mean,
and I want to be clear, like when he was threatening military force for a while, that's violence. That's the same as me going into a liquor store and pointing a gun and saying, if you don't give me the money, I'm going to I'm going to shoot you. So you don't have to actually shoot someone in order to be charged with a violent crime. You know,
right.
but and that is why our allies and countries around the world were correctly flipping out because the United States of America was using violence against an ally, an innocent country.
Yeah.
So we were the bad guys. And we
Yeah.
did, and to say that it didn't happen because he finally walked it back,
It's just
it didn't
negotiating,
happen.
Professor. It's
Yes.
just negotiating.
No,
Master
it's not.
negotiator.
No. That is not just negotiating. That's unlike anything he's done really with anybody else.
So you're saying that it really is a bright red line. It's really
Yep.
easy for people to understand when you're using
Well,
violence or a threat of violence against somebody. That's just totally different than other types of persuasion.
yes.
Yeah. And I think most people get
It's
that.
different than tariffs. It's different than threats of economic sanctions. It's different than everything else.
Yeah. Okay. So, Professor, I want to go to a lightning round just for a hoot because we haven't done a lightning round like this ever. So, ready for this?
Yeah,
And some of
maybe.
these are unfair, and you can do a pass if you wish
All
because there's a
right.
couple politically incorrect ones on here.
Okay.
Um, this is power. Well, we'll see if it's power or persuasion. Maybe you can answer it in that way. Or what I'm really was before this conversation, I was asking you for who's more powerful, and I'm giving you some options. Ready?
Yeah.
The person in the spotlight or the hidden person? Who has more power?
It just depends. I mean, you could be a famous serial killer in prison and you're in the spotlight, and you
But
can be a
without much
secret
power, probably.
billionaire. A serial killer with in a high profile trial versus a billionaire you've never heard of. The billionaire you've never heard of is more powerful than the serial killer.
Yeah, so it can't. It depends. But a Hollywood star versus the person working in a waitress at the place who wants to be a star. The Hollywood star would have more power, right?
Well, the thing about that scenario is um, power is based on desire. So if I and this has happened to me, again, getting back to my tomatoes metaphor, um, if somebody else has something that you want, uh, and has control over something you want, then they have some kind of a power over you.
Yeah.
But so in that scenario, the person who wants to become an actress is jealous of or gives power to the person who already is the actress.
Okay. Cool. It's that's a toss up. Next one. Who has more power? Someone who's knowledgeable or someone who's ignorant?
I mean, in most cases, I guess I see where you're going. The person who's knowledgeable would be, but Donald Trump is wildly ignorant and incredibly powerful right now.
Right. And the answer is it's possible to be more
Yeah,
powerful being ignorant.
because it's also, I mean, this is the thing is like, and my friends in economics I think, are the ones who remind me of this the most. Regular people tend to underestimate the role of luck. Sometimes people do just get lucky, and we are pattern-seeking animals, and so when we see someone who is in a, I shouldn't say has achieved, someone who is occupying a specific status, will tend to put a narrative or a story on that status
It may or may not be
that
true at
that,
all.
that might be completely undeserved.
Yeah. Cool. Who has more power? The thinking person or the action person?
Um, um, the person, I guess it's the thinking person who isn't afraid to act.
Well,
Uh,
so that's you're combining though both. But
yeah. I mean, I guess the thinking person, if you, again, it depends on this thing. Are we talking about power or are you talking about influence?
yeah,
You know, because the person of action could use violence, but if you take violence off the table, then the thinking person will always win because they have control over their own desires.
it's really helpful to have that power. I mean, violence versus persuasion. That's really helpful for this. Kind of ruined my lightning round thing. It's so important. So well
Well,
done.
in so many things, what we were talking about before the mics heated, or well, before we started recording, like in so many cases, we make category errors. We present ourselves with false choices,
Both choices. Yeah.
and the role of the humanities is to keep unraveling these false choices and saying, you keep saying it's either this or this, and you're asking the wrong question. You need to study how human beings are and realize that that this is not an A or a B, and I must choose one.
Reminds me of the Princess Bride. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I
Well,
still
it
want to.
reminds me of my favorite. There was this movie called Club Paradise.
Yeah. I've got to watch that. You brought that up like five
Well, there
times.
was another good line from Club Paradise that just reminded me of as another Robin Williams joke. He said, that woman said you weren't fit to sleep with pigs, but I defended you. I said you were. Like, in other words, like you're acting as if the two choices are you're either not fit to sleep with pigs or you
Yeah.
are fit to sleep with pigs,
Yeah.
forgetting that there's this other option out there
Right.
that maybe you don't want to sleep with pigs.
Right. That is funny. Let me keep going if you don't mind. We'll
Yeah.
go rapidly now. Organizational, an organization or a lone wolf? Who has more power?
Um,
The individual or the collective?
Again, it just depends on if you've got like,
Yeah,
the
depends.
spirit of Jesus in you.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that you can do is if you have a religious faith, you can simply say, I reject every form of worldly, or because what matters to me is eternal grace, and anything of this world has no control over me at all.
Yep. Yep. I think I have another one on that. Principles or none?
Well, being amoral is liberating because a sociopath never has to wrestle with the consequences of their actions. And by the same token, people who don't believe in any form of eternal truth, who only believe in power, they are unleashed. I mean, this is the problem with, I don't want to mention his name, but we had a Trump supporter on, and I remember everybody thinking how polite the time passed. And at the end, you said, "Well, you didn't even challenge on him." And I was like, "Well, if you think about what he actually said, he said that there's no such thing as truth, and all that matters is power." And that's wrong. And that is at the heart of what many Trump supporters say, is that there's no such thing as right and wrong, and all that matters is power. And that is a definition of evil. Uh,
You're one of your favorite contemporaries in high office now in the White House. Stephen Miller has given several speeches on that recently.
yeah, he is a I'm trying to think of
Well, don't get sued by him.
well, I'm trying to think of how I would he's a gargoyle. He is
A gargoyle. That's not a complimentary.
no, I wasn't trying to compliment him. I was trying to accurately describe how he's able to um just enact evil. He is a physical manifestation of evil.
You're gonna get sued. You can't say that.
I think I could prove it in court.
God. Okay. Well, now I'm gonna get sued. I've been the host of a professor
Oh,
that.
well,
Okay.
well, I just think that that I think that what I'm doing is accurate, trying to accurately summarize what he is in the public sphere.
Okay. So if I were to take that cut quote out and then put Professor Stephen Tootle and post it on the interweb and went viral, yeah, you're comfortable with that. You stand behind your words.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. We got to keep going. Which is really interesting, though, Professor. I appreciate you being so strong on that because it helps other people maybe identify it. Because
Well,
sometimes,
I sometimes I want to remind you. I try to answer the questions you ask,
right.
and so if you, so sometimes I'll give a longer answer because I feel like, here's the thing that I don't think you're asking, but I do try to specifically answer the
Yeah.
questions you ask.
Yeah. You're good. In both ways, in being literal and going, I think he wants me to answer this. Okay. Educated or not, who has more power?
Um, Assuming the pre 50 years ago definition of education as the pursuit of truth, always the educated. Yeah.
Okay. You feel strong. Out of all the ones we've mentioned so far, that's the one you've spelt most strongly on. Nice.
Well, I qualified it because
Right. Right. Right.
I mean, I think it's sad when we use the word education today, we usually mean someone who doesn't want students to learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I'm rejecting the modern definition of education, which is no one learning anything but indoctrination and lies.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
mean that. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
the old idea that what you should be engaged in is a process of uh, seeking the accumulated knowledge of the human experience.
yeah. Very nice. Rich versus poor. Who has more power?
Uh, Again, it just depends on. I guess, can I just make the sort of blanket statement that for someone of religious faith who, and I literally had this conversation with one of my sons yesterday, where I said, my job as a parent is to constantly remind you not to value worldly things. Yeah, like that, and remind you that you are not of this world. So it's very hard for me to answer this question when you pose it like it's objective, because my answer is always going to be, if you want me to be honest, I would just say, like, do you have God in your heart? Because if that's the case, who cares about rich or poor?
Yeah,
Like, you're not actually supposed to care about that. And so if you have grace, you have the only power that matters.
okay.
So
Remember this.
but I know that that's not the answer you want me to give. So
Right.
uh,
So remember
you
this
mean sort of,
context.
let's set aside religious
Yeah,
belief and then answer the question. Uh, but it's hard because many people do have religious beliefs.
right. I love that. But keep your answer in mind for 5 minutes from now. Okay. Just
Okay.
remember this whole story. Quickly now. ICE versus protester. Government employee versus protester. Who has more power?
Uh, it, it depends on who's using violence. You know,
Go ahead and expand on this.
well, a protester who engages in civil disobedience could overwhelm the ICE system. Protesters who were willing to engage in peaceful protests and civil disobedience um, could easily overwhelm and overpower law enforcement in America, including ICE, including the military, including everybody else.
If they use their power
Yeah,
wisely,
yeah, yeah. But the minute they start using violence, they will lose 100% of the time.
because it's much easier to water cannon and tear gas and use bullets and disperse a large crowd than it is if they're peacefully nonviolent.
Because violence is a force multiplier. Once you begin using violence, the organized violence of the United States civil and military is unmatched in the world. You cannot you can't win that battle. The soldier will always beat the terrorist one on one, and the combined might of political of um, police forces and the military would always be able to outmatch soccer mom with a car, you know,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I we may go back to that. I'm not sure. Military versus police. Who's more powerful?
military.
Huh. I don't know if we have time to go back to that. Interesting. Smart versus dumb.
I mean, you were trained in the military, and one
I
thing
was.
that's absolutely clear from all of American history is that you must that and we can have Professor Brasino back on here to talk about this, but you must train a soldier to be a soldier and fight like soldiers. And there, the way that the American military trains our soldiers, nothing compares to that. Nothing.
Well, and also
Policemen are
um,
not trained to be soldiers. They don't fight like soldiers.
they're
They,
different professions. They
It's a
are
completely
completely
different
different
profession.
professions.
Right. And if you're just asking me, yeah, could we take our police force and train them to be a military? Yeah. But right now, no. Like,
Yeah.
They don't do the same thing. That's like asking who's better at putting out fires, the police department or the fire department. Well, the fire department is, you know,
Yeah.
take a bunch of policemen and train them to be firemen. Yeah, but like the police
Yeah.
are
Cool.
policing, and
I've got
the military is good at the military.
yeah, I've got you. Smart versus dumb. Who's more powerful?
Oh, generally speaking, smart, but there's a certain power in being dumb, and there's a real power in being ignorant. But I think the most powerful person sometimes is the sophomore, the educated moron. The word sophomore means like dumb person who thinks they know something.
Yeah.
You know enough to be dangerous, but you don't know enough why you shouldn't do something. You can really hurt a lot of people. People who know a little bit can be very dangerous.
Yeah. We've already covered violent versus peaceful, so thank you. Male versus female.
Um, Again, I would just say like, if you remove violence from the equation, I think you would say female.
Okay. That's
In terms
helpful.
of political and economic power and status in the workforce, and I think by every measurable statistic in the year 2026, the college educated female is the highest and most powerful group of people in America. You know,
Fascinating.
a woman with a college degree is the most powerful and successful person in America today.
Lovely. This sounds like an oxymoron, but I'm still going to ask it. Strong versus weak. Who's more powerful? Is it an easy answer?
Well, are we removing the religious part of this?
Or the violent part of it? Yeah.
Yeah, because I would just say, in my religion, blessed are the meek,
Cool.
the ones who are going to inherit. I mean, it's hard for me, like in a non-religious secular context, generally the strong, but I would just say, like, I define the strong person as the person who knows their own mind and knows their own heart. And that might not be how other people define what strength is, you
Yeah.
know.
And as weaved through everything else, occasionally that weak person may use overwhelming violence
And
and
I was thinking about like I was as we are talking about the military or something like that. But like if you were to go to a gym and find the guy with the biggest biceps and the biggest quads and put him up against someone who just got out of basic training in the Marines, uh, that person who just got out of basic training in the Marines would kill that guy. So it's not about, curls or quads. It's a combination of strength and mind that is,
desire,
it's often
desperation,
not,
lots of things
what
go
you
into
would
forming.
see visually,
Yeah. Yeah, I found that out in both pugil just training
yeah.
and we did boxing and hand to hand. There are some people out there that are just these little wily guys, man. Don't mess with them. They're
I mean, there was a guy I went to high school with, and who everybody made fun of and thought he was a weirdo and stuff. And he's still one of my best friends. I love the guy, but he was one of those weirdos who did Tai Chi,
yeah.
And I remember I was kind of like, "What are you doing Tai Chi for?" And he's like, "Well," and then he said, "Well, if you do it fast, it's this." And I when he did it fast, and I was like, "Oh my God, you could actually like." You could beat up any of these people with that.
Uh-huh.
And it just reminded me that like there is no substitute for training,
Yeah.
Anyway,
Agreed. Intoxicated or sober? Who's more powerful?
sober, definitely sober. That's
Unless you use violence.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Married versus single.
Mm, um, I would say married.
Okay. I just got to keep moving.
If
Loud
you're a
versus
teen,
quiet. Last
right,
one.
a married couple. I mean, this is the difference between. I'm currently not married, so the difference is that when you're married, you are a team going through life together. And there's really nothing else like that in society. you know, I date, I have a girlfriend I've had for many years, but it's not the same. When you're married, you are a team of people facing all the challenges of life together. It really is for better or for worse, I mean, ideally it's supposed to be for better or for worse, rich or poor, right? It is a you are in a you are locked in a partnership. Um,
And
that
that's generally stronger than the lone wolf out there
Oh,
who got married.
always,
Yeah.
always. I mean,
Okay.
married people share a memory. Think about this. Like, you don't even have to remember things. There are people who study memory who say that, married couples who have been together for a long time, they actually sh start to kind of share a brain, and
Yeah.
they
I
want
heard
to
that.
study, like the patterns of their brains will, sort of match. It's crazy.
So, Professor, I wanted to put power in a layman's term, which is why I did the pro con and strength, and that helpful because I think that might fit into people's lives when they go, "Oh, really? I should be less intoxicated more if I want to make a difference in my life," or et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I
So,
would, all that stuff, I always start with like, if you truly would like to be powerful, in the first advice that I give my students is you need to take your phone and you need to put it in another room at like 7 p.m. And the first thing you need to do is get some sleep. Everyone in society is distracted and sleep deprived. So we can't diagnose almost anything that's wrong with society until everybody puts their phones away and gets some sleep. And then we can then find out and start diagnosing everything else. But
you know,
like, we have a
it,
distraction and sleep problem in America right now.
it is hilarious, Professor. I thought we've had a partnership that's been pretty strong over 5 years, so I was positive that you were going to say people need to put down their phone at 7 o'clock and read a good history book is what I swore you were going to
Well,
say.
yeah, but that's the thing. You're not going to read a history book as long as you're scrolling on something that is, you know, designed using the best social science to always keep you distracted. There's no way that real life could ever compare to, I mean, I like to think about like the difference between the social sciences and the humanities. And sometimes it sounds like I'm being critical of social science, but social science is actually amazing and incredibly dangerous. It is actually incredibly, uh, I don't know, it seems like a miracle, like in the way that a magic trick seems like a miracle. um, how because we all have similar brains, that you can, within, use probability to predict how human beings will behave. Now, the problem is there are some people who say, well, that's all we need to study, you know, and I just, that's not true either. But you can use social science in order to create, and this is what, the in the history of social science, social science has always been funded by advertising. The big money in social science has always come from trying to influence human behavior in order to get them to buy things.
Buy a cereal box or the
Yeah.
newest dress.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, somebody seeking pure science is, can't compete with that much money, and that's always been the case. For well over a century, we've been dedicating, uh, probably trillions, I don't know, hundreds of billions, of dollars into trying to influence people to buy things. And uh, again, the difference between power and influence. Like, um, so you can't discount how powerful your phone is as a distraction device. And your conscious brain can't fight it. The only thing you can do is turn it off or put it in another room. If that thing is on and it's in your hand, your unconscious brain will keep going for it. So, and, and social science works, and
Yeah.
the fact that that will work 99 or 98.5% of the time means that it will overwhelm your life. Uh,
Okay, so Professor, I concur, and that's nice for you to emphasize that. It fits in. However, I've got to switch big picture
yeah.
and now historically. Ready?
Yep.
Is there a different type of power? And you've mentioned it with religion several times, and so that's helpful. But is there a different type of power called principles?
Yes.
Plain ideology, a
Yeah.
desire to be different, to be steadfast, to have character. And so I'm talking countries now. Is there a difference between the United States and many other countries in the world throughout history? And please kind of describe the importance of this difference
Well,
so
there
we can
used to
put
be.
everything else into
I mean,
perspective.
this is what President Trump has destroyed. It is ironic that the red hats say "Make America Great Again" when his goal is to make America weak. It's to make America like other countries used to be, and make America like every other country in history before America came along. Um,
Which is
the
what
source
are
of
all these?
America,
Yeah,
what's that?
what
Is
are these
it's
other countries used to be, and what are we?
Yeah,
Why are we?
because he believes he doesn't understand America, and so his fundamental political ideology is un-American, and especially as it expresses itself in the world. Um, he, I mean, he is and would like to destroy America as an ideological nation state. Um, and what I mean by that is that this, and you know how we always say American exceptionalism properly understood? That's the actual source of American power. The actual source of American power in the world is the most powerful thing, the biggest force for good in human history, after probably religion, uh, is the United States serving as an example that human beings can govern themselves peacefully. And when they do that, it works. And if you're somebody who's materially motivated, it's the only thing on earth that creates wealth. And ultimately, the wealth that is a byproduct of those beliefs, that's the source of our military power. But and this is something that I wish people understood Eisenhower better because that was his argument always. You know, you don't understand. I mean, it felt like for most of his public career, Dwight Eisenhower was explaining to the American people. And if you want to read the document that, if you read NSC 162/2, that was our national security policy outlined under Eisenhower. And in it, he explained that if we try to become like other countries, that's when we become weak. So if you think that Russia is powerful because they have tanks, and then the United States says, well, we must build tanks, then we will become like them and we will be weak. What makes us strong is not doing that. What makes us strong is making sure that we don't lose what is special about the United States when facing this foreign challenge, because it's our ideals that are the source of our national power. And I do mean, and he understood it's literally the source of our military power. And if you
Well,
want to
so
read an interesting book that just sort of is full of examples of this, there's this book by I think his name's Philip Taubman called Secret Empire. It's a great read, but it's mostly about how the United States was able to take technology in private industry and immediately just put it into military applications that allowed us to just leapfrog the world year after year after year. So that, if you think about what the world builds in terms of military power, just it becomes more targets for us to destroy safely. You know, but it's a what Donald Trump sort of his argument to the world, it's like the argument of North Korea or Russia or something like, or Saddam Hussein. When we went to war in the Gulf War, they had everybody who thinks that military power just comes from numbers, you know, who doesn't realize it doesn't really matter how many of those horrible tanks you have out there because we can blow up one of them. We can blow up 50 of them. Like, I don't know, have 100. But it doesn't matter. It's just more stuff for us to blow up. Like, but if you're one of those, it's like how a child understands. Uh, I mean, this is the thing that's so frustrating about Trump and Trump supporters is like they can't, it's like they see the world without without the ability to even reason beyond one level of abstraction. And you're like, well, they have a tank and we have a tank. You're like, yeah, but their tank is worthless. So stop saying that. It's like you're dealing with kids who don't understand how peekaboo works. You know that when you close your eyes, you don't actually disappear, right? Like this is what it's like when you're talking to them, though. It's like talking to a bunch of, I'm sorry, I'm getting frustrated, but it's like talking to people who think that when they play peekaboo, they disappear. What this is not an adult conversation that we're having. Like, are you dumb? You just want to be like, are you dumb? What's wrong with you?
So, Professor, it's not a sickness. That's not the right way to describe it, but maybe it's ignorance. When you see the bully with the big bicep versus the thoughtful person just doing good work, and you try to make the comparison, well, the bully is going to win. Well, but it really depends if the guy doing good work can run faster or hide better or fight another day or use their brain. There's all sorts of power, so to speak, that can counter a bully with a bicep. And so why do people not understand, though, that character or vision or ideals or respective rules and processes or respective institutions or respective history or worldliness is actually a version of military might? It's a useful.
Because nobody in politics is making this case right now. The American people have no choice. In other words, and this is where I feel like, if I've made all the Trump supporters angry today, now let me make all the Democrats angry.
Before you do that, hold on. Remember your thought.
Yeah.
But Professor, I'm still confused because in Boy Scouts, citizenship in the community, citizenship in the nation, in soccer team, my coach taught me stuff that was more about not playing with the ball. It's about why fair play is important or how to help somebody get better, how to help be a good teammate where we all can, whether it's Air Force ROTC when we were learning instruments of national power, whether it's being an enlisted guy in the Army. A lot of this stuff wasn't just how to shoot an M16. It was a worldliness. It was a sophistication. Every private in the Army's taught this.
So all of that's true, but we currently live in a regulated two-party system. And if I just think if you want a good example of what I find frustrating, it's how Democrats attack David Valadao. Because everybody runs around saying, if only there was a Republican that. And then here we have one who is. He's everything that we say we've been waiting for, and the Democrats attack him like he's Trump, you know?
because he counts in one out of the 435 in order to get the
Yeah,
control of
yeah,
Congress.
exactly. And but in many contests where you have, and certainly in the presidential contest last time and for the last few election cycles, there wasn't anybody articulating well, I guess that's not true. Obama in his first term said he was going to be an American president. And Joe Biden um, sometimes said he was going to be an American president and that what he was going to do was restore um, regular American life. But Obama stopped doing that and in his second term, and Joe Biden stopped doing it, within hours of being in office. So you can forgive the American people for saying, show me where my normal alternative is, and I'll vote for him or her. There aren't any normal um, national figures right now leading or representing either political party. Um,
Well, Justin Amash does so. I don't know if you follow him at all, but he
a
is
little bit.
constantly
I
talking
mean,
about
but again, he's one congressman, like David Valdez,
former
one
congressman. Yeah,
congressman, and neither
yeah,
one of them are the head of their party, and
yeah. Fair
they're
enough.
not senators, and which means, uh, and they're not governors and leaders of states, and they're just not national figures. Nobody who people think of as representing their
Fair enough.
political party.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I should allow you to rip into Democrats since you said you wanted to do that. You ripped into
Well,
Trumpyism.
that's
Now
it. I
you
mean, that's the extent of it, is that for that every time, um, you know, before people jump on this sort of gleeful bandwagon of bashing Trump, I always want to make sure that I'm not saying that of people who voted for Trump
right.
on the assumption that he was the more normal of the two candidates. Uh, because there are a lot of good people who did that. And because they saw that there were no normal options. Um, and again, it wasn't the choice I made, it wasn't the choice you made, but it was, I would say, within the realm of understandable.
I know a lot of good people that did that.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I don't, and I think Democrats are going to learn all the wrong lessons from the Trump administration, because what they are learning is we need to be is what Trump learned from Democrats is that he needed to be like the Democrats. And Democrats are like, we need to be more like Trump. But
Which is
they
this
all
weird,
share this. It's the
which is
same
this weird
governing.
downward spiral, though.
Yeah, it's the same. It's in terms of governance, not in terms. If you were to separate principles from issues, Democrats and Trump supporters have the same governing principles, which is reward friends, punish enemies, and do whatever you think you can get away with to the other person. That means that they are the same in terms of their governing philosophies. Um, what they would like to do, who their enemies are, just happen to be different. Their friends are different and their enemies are different, but in terms of their principles of governance, it's the same.
Yeah. You're making me sad. We go back into history again for a second. Before the United States came along, and similar philosophies that helped lead the United States to get to what it was, most of power throughout history was based off what?
Are you talking, I'm sorry, before the United States?
Yeah, before the United States, it wasn't on principles. Most of power was
Violence,
based on what?
violence to control land and resources, which is how Trump, that's what he wants to do, is make America into a country that thinks that power comes from ownership of land, resources, and violence.
It's Genghis Khan, it's Attila the Hun, it's every
Yep.
tribal familial
Right.
power based structure in the history of the world.
It's make America ungreat again.
Yeah. Okay. Is it internally in America and then externally? To most Americans and then to most of the other 8 billion people out in the world, do they think of America as the shining city on the hill of value and virtue and nobleness and character and equality? Or do they think that we're just a brute force, selfish, independent of Trump? Over the last 50 years, do they think we're doing things for the right reason, or do they think we're just, is it a ruse?
Well, let's remember the United States of America is an ideological nation state, which means you have ideas, you have the people, and you have the government. Leaders of other countries now believe that the government of the United States is evil. They are unsure about the American people, but they still believe in the ideals of the United States. What we heard last week from leaders all over the world is that they still believe in American ideals and they're trying to grapple with the fact that America doesn't.
Professor, what chance is it that you're just biased by liberal media? I think a lot of my friends, my conservative friend, no, not conservative, my Republican friends, would hear that and go, "Oh, BS! America's the same as we've always been. We just need to execute our strength better. We need to be more powerful. We need to be more robust. We need to be more vicious if
They are
necessary."
too cynical. In a way, it's like Trump supporters are like they're just like dealing with faculty leftists. And I wish, it's like they act like they hate these, oh, this professor leftist, whatever. It's like you sound exactly like them. Like you think that America was always filled with nothing but a bunch of cynical, power-hungry, um, evil people who were doing whatever they want, taking whatever they want, and that there was never anything stopping them or directing them. And it's like they all believe in the Trump supporter and the faculty leftist, they all believe the same Howard Zinn version of American history. The most, if you want to know like what caused the downfall of American civilization, it might be that history book. That history book might be the greatest force for like evil because it is now not just how the radical faculty leftist talks about America, it's how Trump supporters talk about America. And you have no idea that actually, yes, Americans were human and there were in every era people who were violent and corrupt and uh, but also in every era there were Americans who were willing to sacrifice their lives for the idea that human beings could govern themselves. And it feels like, these people who are like waving flags right now are just pissing on the graves of all the people who died for this stuff. And I want to take their flags away from them. What are you doing? Uh, People died for these ideas that you're saying were never real. They were real. You can't convince me that America didn't exist. Like, I studied it. It did.
And it's not just an opinion; it's based off original documents. I mean, it's letters that people write to each other, not
Yeah,
soldiers as well as presidents. I mean, it's
yeah.
real life people.
And it's not just that. It's in diaries of individuals. It's in letters that they wrote to the newspaper. It's in the speeches of city council people. It's in newspapers. It's in editorials. It's in sermons. Like it's in every shred of documents that we have about the American past that we had a culture based on ideals. you know, it's there. Um, and people on if they want to describe themselves as being on the left or on the right, like they're all denying the reality that America ever existed. It did.
And you're confident that world leaders or world populations still respect the idea of America.
They respect, yes, American ideals. I mean, it's sad. I mean, I haven't read every single statement by every single world leader from the past 2 weeks, but they kind of remind me of that interview I talked about in a previous episode with that leader from, I think she was from Lithuania. Uh, and I can't remember, but I just remember the sound of her voice and what she was describing with this other, she was being, it was no Americans were in this interview. It was a European interviewing a European. And what they were talking about is we have this problem. America doesn't believe in America anymore. What should we do now that we are more American than America? Like,
So it's
what
like
responsibilities do we have to the world now that the United States of America is no longer standing up for American ideals?
the Peter Schramm essay.
Yeah, sort of in reverse. Now, I guess it is to the credit of America that we were able to spread these ideas throughout the world so that so that now that we're under the control of someone who is no longer an American where an American president in many ways um, that that they unite in a united way. It's funny, like embracing American ideals also enriched much of the rest of the world too. But in terms of economic power, all of Europe together isn't as powerful as the United States. So, but they are powerful enough to stand up to the United States economically. But they are not a match for the United States currently.
More population, less GDP, if my memory is correct.
Yeah, and I wish Jake was here because he could put it in
Yeah,
real terms. But
yeah.
oh, and it's kind of sad. I think it's somewhere around, and this sticks in my brain that at the time the EU was founded, the GDP of the United States and Europe was about the same, and now we're probably double.
Was it really changed that much? I'll have to do some more
Yeah,
research on that.
I fact check that, but
Yeah, yeah.
that's what sticks in my memory.
So, Professor, my last question, and then Jeff may have one. Jeff, I hope I've articulated the question that you sent to me to ask for the professor, but if not, please expand. So, last question, Professor.
Yeah.
All this stuff, the specific examples to big history to big geopolitics, I'd like to give some advice, and I've written several essays on this, and I will write more, but I'd like to give some advice on an essay that you wrote, and I think you put this one on Substack. What is a citizen to do with whatever power they believe they have, both spiritual and intestinal and outwardly, and maybe title or money or connections? I mean, we all have different versions of power, but if it's important to have American ideals, which we just take as of course we want that, not just pure brute force power. Of course we want to maximize the human potential, this human spirit. Right? To us, of course we want that. Assuming we're talking to citizens who are frustrated, who are wasting their time on their phone, as well as calling congressional offices and states nowhere near them. Uh, what's your advice to the American citizen for the next year on how to exercise their power and however they choose to?
Uh, Put your phone down. Get some sleep. Get a little. Make sure you're rested. Get a little exercise. Um, Love everyone in your family first. Get your brain right. Attend a house of worship on a weekly basis. Um, and then um, you know, read 3 history books, real ones, three, re, and about American history. Uh, and um, and then I think maybe the next thing to do is start refusing the binary choices and the category errors that people would like to foist upon you.
The boxes I went back and forth, the thinking
Yeah,
versus educator versus, I mean, just stop that.
you know, and it was a problem that Eisenhower recognized back in the 50s. There was a guy named Arthur Larson who wrote a book called What We Are For, and Eisenhower just kept talking about, yeah, everybody needs to read this book because here's the thing, it's not enough to know what you're against. You have to know what you're for. And once you know what you are for, then you have to keep making sure that you have to keep comparing what the world is trying to push on you with what you are for. And then you'll realize I need to start rejecting these false choices and category errors because, you know, matching uh, your ideas with your actions is difficult because it's easy to say, "Oh, I'm for freedom." But then the first time that's challenged, you're like, "Well, but not really." You know, so or you say, "No, I'm going to vote. I think that it's a problem in America uh, that Republicans won't challenge Donald Trump." And then you go out and you vote against David Valadao and you give money to his opponent. Well, guess what? Hypocrite, dummy. Like, if you think it's a problem that Republicans won't stand up to Trump, then what you need to do is support Republicans who are opposing Trump. And you need to not reject the Republican Party, you need to join it. Because right now, in both political parties, and and I saw this on Twitter, a social scientist posted this, and I was like, I couldn't believe it was true. But essentially, the rise of the independent voter, which is now in many states the majority, means that the selection of party candidates is all being done by radicals. So all reasonable people, they think they're doing the right thing by abandoning their parties. But if but what you need to do, and maybe I need to follow my own advice, is I mean, I didn't leave, but I got out of public life. Um, but you have to register as a member of a political party and vote for any candidate who appears to be normal and reasonable. But handing political power over to a bunch of radicals has not proven to be a good idea.
And it gives the average voter who barely or doesn't vote in the primary and the general, they get the choice between two crazy
Between the
radicals.
two people who were chosen by the most radical factions.
Yeah.
I mean, it's why in the Democratic primary, every Democrat raised their hand and said that they wanted government funded sex changes for prisoners. You know, it's just like, well, yeah, there you go. It means that now we have this litmus test that the only people who can run for office are people who will say the most outrageous things, and they must do that in
Because
order to gain the
select,
nomination. Yeah.
yeah, the microcosm. Yeah. Okay. Well, and you and I differ on that a little bit, but we're out of time. So helpful. But you don't think it's not silly, unsophisticated hey, I want to make a change in our political system. I want to make sure we're the shining city on the hill and protect freedom and help people around the world. I want to be an American. I want to do
I think all that's good.
American exceptionalism properly defined. I need to go and get a good night's sleep. You really mean what you say? You can't take some bold thing. You don't join Cato and take out a mortgage and send a big check to Cato
Well, you
or
should absolutely be reading this stuff that the Cato Institute puts out. I mean, I always say, like, I'm not a libertarian, but I always want one in the room. You know,
yeah.
they're super smart, super motivated, and they do really good work, and they raise really important questions that everyone should be prepared to answer. And so, you want a libertarian challenging you all the time.
Okay.
Like,
Well, you need to be
I want one standing next to me telling me how I'm wrong all the time.
yeah. So you want citizens to do a wide variety of things, from the basic Maslow to get good sleep and eat healthy and exercise and be a good husband or wife, um, or date well or well, have live a good life, but then also do some other steps of citizenry.
Yeah, take your citizenship seriously,
Yeah.
engage in civic life.
Okay.
Uh,
I'll accept that. All right. We're almost out of time. Jeff, did you want to jump in with any mistakes or faux pas that I made, or do you think I went way astray? Jeff.
Yeah. Um, I don't think you went way astray. I think this was a very coherent discussion. I guess I have a couple of points and then one challenging question for the professor. Um, you brought David Valdeo up a bunch, and I understand your point. I think the difficulty is, and I'm not familiar with his voting record or even with him the way you guys are, but it does seem like we're still seeing as voters that people that we elect choose party over virtue, choose party over their values far too often. And it's what you described about the primaries. I understand your point. The answer is not, and Professor Tootle, you and I disagree on this. I think the parties are largely the problem, the fact that we have only two. And um, the answer is not to strengthen them again and for the Republicans to take back their party because they already tried that and they failed. And now a whole lot of
here, I'm trying
Republicans
to take
like,
notes. Can you repeat that again? Sorry, dude, that's bad podcasting, but I'm trying to take notes on what you're saying. Repeat.
that the Republicans tried to take back their party and failed. I mean, Liz Cheney, they tried to
Hmm.
take back the party from Trump, and those that are elected have chosen power over virtue.
Hmm.
They've chosen to stay with, and I've told people, and I'm not sure if you guys agree with this, but I think there is a tipping point. I think there's a tipping point where Trump becomes weakened enough that senators and representatives that are not true believers in everything he says, but have been going along, will get to the point where they're like, hey, wait, we could topple him. If we just switch and vote against him, he can be gone. And I think we'll reach that during his presidency, hopefully after the midterms. But I'm getting a little far afield here. So a lot of what you talked about power though was the lesson of Vietnam, right? That you can't win the hearts and minds of people through power. And hopefully we're seeing that, in Minnesota as well. But here's my question for you, Professor Tootle. In a lot of your answers on the lightning round and throughout this podcast, you have brought religion into it. In fact, it was one of the necessary things for a person to do to be a good citizen. Go to a house of worship every week. Um, do you think that religion is a prerequisite for being moral and, by extension, being able to understand American values?
I think it's uh, difficult, if not impossible, to let me put it this way. In order to understand American ideals, you first have to reject the idea that power is all that matters. And you have to have a commitment to ideals that you think are true beyond your own lifetime. And in order to believe in ideals that are true beyond your own lifetime, it's hard to get around the necessity to contemplate that at least once a week. And houses of worship. I didn't say you have to go and join a cult. I said you have to go to a house of worship as as part of a regular practice of contemplating that there is a truth beyond your time on this earth. And there are truths that are eternal. And and yeah, I mean, fine, skip a week. I'm not going to church this week. I didn't go last week. And I didn't go to Bible study this week either. But
let me interrupt, Professor.
You need to regularly remind yourself that 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 it's not just about power in your lifetime.
Professor.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, I'm not surprised by your answer, although you've never been this direct before, so it's interesting for me to think through. Surprisingly, regardless of this conversation, I have several pretty close friends that I've discovered over the last year or two that are practicing Buddhists, and they practice every day. In fact, they're good enough. They practice it all day, every day, not just once a week in congregation. They practice it consciously all day, every day. So another one that surprised me is I have a couple.
I'm just giving you what I think of as the sort of bare minimum. Like obviously the ideal is that you're supposed to be contemplating the eternal, what is eternally true and beautiful and good.
But is Buddhism good enough for you? Is Buddhism good enough for you, or does it need to be some Christian based?
I just think it has to be some sort of regular practice in reminding yourself that you believe in eternal truth.
How about Stoicism?
Is it a regular practice with other people that focuses your attention, where you put your phone away for an hour and are forced to think?
Yes, more so.
Yeah, I'm not making a claim for anything other than the regular practice that involves a non-distracted practice of a commitment, committing to a non-distracted practice where you are focused on thinking about what is eternal, true, beautiful, and good.
So, Professor, you don't mean religion, and you mean ethics, morality, or religion.
What I'm describing is religion.
By religion, you're not saying it has to be organized religion. Based on the...
I don't know I guess I don't know what organized religion means by that definition. Like, is an organized religion, does it have to have wood pews? Like, there are a lot of churches on earth that look very different from one another, but I think it does have to be communal and it does have to be regular. Because I don't buy a lot of spiritual, not religious people. I just have I've heard people say it, but I've never actually experienced it. Everybody I've ever met who says they're spiritual and not religious, they all are like, angry people with bumper stickers. That's not, they're not, they might be out there somewhere, but I've just never met them.
What do you think of me, Professor? I don't regularly attend church.
I don't know. What do you mean? I think you're a nice guy. What do you want to know?
But you said it would just be a woo-woo thing that I don't really believe or something.
I think that you would be better off and happier if you did.
Yeah. Okay. I get your point on that.
I'm not saying you could put John Brackney in jail. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that, if you're asking for my advice, I would say you would be better off if you went and sat in a church once a week.
I'll accept that.
I'm not even going to tell you what your mind should think. You should just engage in a regular practice where you think about eternal truth.
Yeah, and I'm talking about citizenship and country and the citizen's role in it, and I'll accept that. Jeff, do you accept it?
uh, that
No,
that it's required in order to be a good
but you need to
American?
go
Just
to
have,
church,
don't say
man.
required, just say better off. That you would be better
I
off
I don't
if you
I don't
went
think it is a
somewhere
necessary,
and
but
regularly
it's a
thought
sufficient.
about your place in the universe.
It's not a necessary, but it is a sufficient condition.
Well, I mean, you can go without sleep for most of your life too. I'm just saying what, if I'm giving advice, I'm saying what's better, what's worse. Like it would be better if you ate healthy. Can you eat junk food? Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
but what's better? Better would be if you're asking me what's better, better is to go somewhere with other human beings and think about your place in the universe on a regular basis.
Yeah, I'll accept that. Jeff, do you accept that or not?
Not fully.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for being ethical. Okay, gentlemen, um, concluding remarks, Professor.
Well, I had some other disagreements with what Jeff said.
Oh, well, jump in. Yeah,
Yeah,
jump in
so
real quick.
real quick, the mere absence or presence of two parties is probably not the problem because we have functioned in the past with two parties. So I think it's just something else, not a big disagreement, just something that like it can't just be the presence of two parties. It's
So
something else.
let me use what you just said. I think we'd be better off with more choices than two,
Yeah,
more
maybe.
real choices than two.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that what probably has to happen is that one of our parties has to collapse. But I'm not sure.
It's
That sort of.
we
I mean,
see
if you
that
think
happen.
about it, what happened in the years before the Civil War is the parties both collapsed under the weight of the fact that neither party was representing the majority opinion of the United States. And so, in
Which is
essence,
where we are now.
yeah, exactly. So we're facing a situation very much like the years before the Civil War, where neither party is representing the majority of the American people, and that situation just simply can't go on forever. But it can go on for 30 or 40 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Like,
time horizon
yeah.
is
So, and
yep.
then your point about the tipping point, I just, would say like I think we actually did reach a tipping point this past week because if Donald Trump had done what he said he was going to do, you would have seen Republican senators vote to have him removed from office. But don't think that solves the problem because we have a JD Vance problem, which is if you remove Donald Trump from office, JD Vance becomes a president and he's more likely to become the next president. So people are thinking about that actively when they're deciding, do we remove this president from office? And then the other thing, probably topic for another discussion, is I don't necessarily agree with how you characterize the lessons of Vietnam, but that's a history discussion that requires a
I,
lot of
I
time.
knew I knew you were going to take exception with that.
I love
So
that.
anyway, just some
We'll leave that
small
for
things,
another
maybe
day.
subjects for another day. Yeah.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you for your comments. Jeff, thanks for weighing in. Professor, I think we need to help Americans, similar as you want to help them spiritually or as a human. We need to help Americans be good citizens. We need to not just be victims. We not just like, oh, we're beholden to whatever travesties are coming upon us. That's just so un-American. No, we need to determine what we believe in and organize our thoughts and write them down and get the second person to agree with us. And then let's go out and do good work together.
And
Right?
you know what? And I would say this, like, prove me wrong. Go to 6 churches over the next 6 months that are within 6 miles of your house, and and then tell me that you didn't get something out of the experience. I think you will.
I love that. Since we're a non-religious show, I'd also challenge everyone to go to 6 service organizations or 6 nonprofits or 6 community-based sporting teams and find out that there's amazing people doing amazing work.
Well, I'll lower the bar. I'll say go to one city council meeting, one county supervisor
There you
meeting,
go.
and one youth sports event.
Yeah, we're on the same page. All right, Professor, thanks so much for your time. I hope we're contributing for the good of our state.
Hope so too. And Jeff, I hope you understand. I really do appreciate the questions. Like it is valuable, and even if I hope I wasn't too sharp, but um, I just want you to know I really appreciate and I wish we need more people. Again, we need a libertarian in here to tell me I'm wrong about everything.
How do you know I'm not a libertarian?
Oh, maybe you are. Okay, yeah. Maybe we've got one. Yeah,
I refuse to be anything anymore.
yeah. Well, my
Yeah,
problem with
well,
libertarians was never the stuff from Cato. It was when I would go to one of their events and there'd always be like, some people defending slavery there, and I was like, I can't be a part of this. Like,
no, no. I like a lot of libertarians. In fact, I love some too. But man, they are nuts as a
well,
stereotype.
but the smart ones are so smart. Like you don't want to cut
That's
yourself off from them, but you just
that's.
you don't want to end up.
We just need to ask the follow-up question: are you a
Well,
libertarian or an
they all are too angry with Lincoln, and they don't. The, I mean, I'm a believer in subsidiarity, not necessarily small government for its own sake. I think government needs to be big sometimes.
I will admit that in the past I thought of myself as a libertarian, and that was just because I didn't really understand it.
Yeah, I always say like I'm libertarian adjacent. I'm 90% there.
90? Gosh, I don't know if I'm 70% on anybody or anything, but 90. Wow. Okay, Professor, thanks for
Well,
your time.
here's the thing about their studies, and they're usually right.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, I mean, that's the thing about why I say you really need to take them seriously is that
Well, if you're talking Cato types,
yeah, the
yes.
Cato type people are like really
Right.
solid. Yeah.
All right, we got to go, gentlemen. Thank you so
Okay.
much for your
Yeah.
time, and
Great
Thank
to see,
you.
great
we
to
have
see
another half-hour program. Woohoo!
you.
I think the longer I think we have too much to talk about to do it in a half an hour.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate both your time today. Thank you.
All right. Take
Have a
it
good
easy.
day.